Okay, I want everybody to imagine sitting in the school cafeteria. Some of us, we have to go back pretty far. Some of us, just a few months. But imagine sitting in the school cafeteria and you're eating your lunch and, you know, the nasty pizza and the corn or whatever your mom made you from leftovers from last night. You're sitting talking to your friends about who did who under the bleachers at the football game, or, you know, who's talking about whose hair this day or that day. Just normal teenage conversation in the cafeteria. And as you're sitting there, these two guys that you see every day, don't really know who they are, you walk in. You don't pay no attention to them because they're walking in during lunchtime. And all of a sudden, someone screams because these two kids pull out weapons and then they start shooting randomly. Now, there's nowhere for you to go. You can't run out the exit because they're standing in between you and the exit. And they're still firing random shots off everywhere. You try to hide behind a table or under a table or behind a chair. It's not really stopping bullets. So many people run into the kitchen and try to barricade themselves in there. And all of a sudden it goes silent. But you still hear gunshots off in the distance, but you don't know what you want to do. So you run out, and you're still hearing gunshots, and by this time you figured out that these shooters are now in the library shooting others. So you think it's safe for me to run. And as you run, try to get safety outside the building. They come out, they step out, and they shoot you. Now that's just one instance. Now think about sitting in a classroom. And you're sitting there and you're listening to a lecture, and you're listening to, you know, your professor talk about how he schools people on the basketball court, and you're thinking he's talking about 7, 18-year-olds. But he's really, you know, talking about 9 and 10-year-olds. But anyway, nonetheless, you're listening to the lecture, and all of a sudden, down the hallway, you're hearing pop, 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 pop. And you're like, what in the heck is going on? Someone gets up and they go look outside the window. They look out the door. And they see this guy in all black walking into random classrooms just shooting people, professors, students. So you freak out. You come in, you try to barricade the door, you shut off all the lights, everyone rushes to the corner to try to hide from this gunman. Wondering what can be done. You're trying to imagine not dying. Or how about this? You go to a movie theater with your kids, or your best friend, your boyfriend or girlfriend, you know, or you just want to go out because you're a huge Batman fan. You read all the comics, sat there every Saturday morning and watched all the cartoons, seeing all 500 previous versions of Batman. So you're out there thinking you're going to have a good time. You go buy your big old popcorn, you know, your $30 pieces of candy, you know, the high C's that are, you know, make you want to pee halfway between the movie, you know, all that good stuff. And you're sitting there, you're excited, the lights dim down. And out to the corner, you see a guy kind of dressed up. It's a weird outfit. But then the guy next to you is wearing a Batman costume, so you don't really take it into as something that's really too suspicious. Previews go, and you're going through, wondering when the movie's going to start. And then it gets really dark. And the movie starts to play. And you're up in the front row, or the first few rows, because you got there late. And a puff of smoke goes off. And you realize when your throat starts to itch, and your eyes start to water, that this is more than just some special effect that, you know, the movie company decided that they were going to put out for the premiere. Then you hear shots firing. And you try to duck behind the seats, but the bullets are going straight through them. You try to crawl on your hands and knees, hopefully not be seen by the gunman, to try to get out. You try to do all these different things so that way you don't get shot. You hear people screaming, kids crying, and all you can do is worry about getting to safety. Now, unfortunately, this is when the topic of gun control comes up, when these mass shootings happen. We always take a moment of silence because we feel we're respecting the victims of these terrible tragedies. And we don't discuss these issues. So, but the problem is that outside of these mass shootings, about 30 or 32 people a day die from gun violence out on the streets. Doesn't have to be in a movie theater. Doesn't have to be in a school. Doesn't have to be a great big mass media event. It's every day. Happens in our backyards, in our neighborhoods, at our grocery stores, wherever. Nobody talks about gun violence because it's not something that we like to think about. It's not something that, unless it directly affects us, we don't discuss. And that's what we're going to do today. We're going to finally open up our mouths and discuss the pros and cons of gun control. And we are going to have our very own debate today. So will my debaters please come up? Now let me introduce you to our debate. This side we have our pro side. They are for gun control. And over here we have our con side. They are against gun control. Now the first topic we're going to bring up is pro side. Why do you feel gun control is a hinder to self-defense?
Well, first off, people feel that they have the right to self-defense, and so they have a right to carry a firearm with them and to own one to protect themselves if, for instance, someone comes towards them on the street and tries to mug them, tries to steal their money or to hurt them. They feel that they have the right to bear a firearm in self-defense, thinking that this will save them, when in fact, people are 4.5 times more likely to be killed rather than simply injured or stolen from if they are seen to have a gun, because someone who means to just hurt them or take from them sees them as a threat and will kill them. And there's a danger to the mindset of self-defense with a firearm, because it gives people a mentality of bringing the law into their own hands, carry a gun to protect themselves rather than rely on the law. And this is a danger rather than a benefit to people.
Con, your response?
I would first like to say that criminals will always find a way to obtain guns. As Thomas Jefferson once stated, laws that forbid the carrying of arms disarm only those who are neither inclined nor determined to commit crimes. Such laws make things worse for the assaulted and better for the assailants. They serve rather to encourage than to prevent homicides, for an unarmed man may be attacked with greater confidence than an armed man. Also, women, people that are injured, or the elderly have a greater chance of being attacked if they are not armed. Weapons are their only means of self-defense. Police are often even too overwhelmed to help everyone, so individuals need the right to be able to protect themselves from robbers. Even if an adult never needs to draw a concealed handgun for self-defense, a person may feel safer being armed and feel freer to go outside at night or in other dangerous areas.
All right. On the con side, we talk about, illegal access. How does having stricter gun control perhaps hinder the public's ability to protect themselves against those that have illegal access to guns?
Well, banning guns will increase the black market for gun sales. Society will not become safer by restricting gun ownerships, as guns do not kill people, people kill people. In a majority of cases involving guns or firearms, the weapons used are not legally bought or registered. It is either smuggled or stolen. Carrying a concealed handgun could also aid in ending public shooting sprees. The Columbine High School massacre and the Virginia Tech shooting could have been ended if there had been an armed citizen to stop it. But the matter of the fact is that if gun control is put in place, there are more chances that law-abiding citizens will be the victims. Gun control laws, to a large extent, can have no effect on criminals, as there will always be a thriving black market for gun trade on firearms.
Your response, Paul?
Criminals have an illegal access to get their hands on guns. Keep in mind, black market trading of firearms is illegal if you sell to a person without a license. Criminal trading firearms in general is just a crime. Keep in mind, the criminal is always going to commit a crime with a gun. Carrying it or carrying it, having it without a license is illegal.
Okay, on the program, we have this thing called the Second Amendment. Now, how do you go about dealing with the Second Amendment and gun control?
Well, first, I'd like to read the Second Amendment, which states that a well-regulated militia, being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms, shall not be infringed. People use this amendment as justification for the right to own and bear arms. They say that, the Constitution protects their right. The Second Amendment gives them a reason to have a gun and to use it if necessary for self-defense. However, people often quote and cite this amendment incorrectly. First point being that the Second Amendment was created when the United States was a newly formed nation, had just come out of rule from Great Britain, and they felt rather wary of large government, and they felt that they would have the right to protect themselves. They needed to be armed in case the government stopped working for the rights of the people and became a threat to them. Nowadays, that's not so much an issue because the nation has changed, the government is more stable, the nation is more stable in that regard, and a militia, to imply that people can own guns, to use them, to create their own militia to fight against the military of the United States is not really applicable. So you have to wonder whether or not it's really right to cite the Second Amendment in this situation. Is it really applicable at all? Is it really relevant to this time?
Cons, your response?
Well, first of all, the Second Amendment in the Constitution is one of many amendments that protect the citizens of America from a socialistic government. Our right to bear arms can also be implied when, or if used, if an invading force were to invade America and were to take power from our government. If citizens did have firearms, they would be able to protect themselves from an invading force, such as Nazi Germany or Russia. Also, people in the military are American citizens also, and they most of the time do have firearms in their homes. I don't think that they would go against and give away their power to the government if the government simply told them to, if it was a tyrannical government. The right to bear arms protects us from our government trying to convert us to a socialist nation.
Okay. On the con side, how do you guys deal with gun control, or the lack thereof of gun control, and people with mental disabilities?
Well, first of all, a person who is mentally handicapped, you have to define that. Like, is it some horrible mental handicap they've had since birth, like Asperger's or something like that, that's very affecting what they have in a very big way, and it's affecting how they act? Or if it's post-traumatic stress disorder or something like that that can be cured, or depression. First of all, if they have like a horrible mental disease, they should have to go to a psychiatrist, and they should have to be recommended to be able to carry a firearm, and they have to be able to show that recommendation to a gun dealership. But a person who has post-traumatic stress disorder, that can be cured, and their rights to carry a firearm shouldn't just be automatically taken away if they come home from the fighting force and they have this disorder. But if they are cured from this disorder, then they should be able to pick up firearms again.
Okay, on the pro side, how do you respond?
When it comes to regulating who can own a gun based on their mental stability, to consider where gun control plays a role in this, I think it would be good if, like you said, like what determines if someone is mentally able to have a gun, if they're safe to. And part of gun control, part of a good system of regulating who owns a gun, who's fit to own a gun, and who isn't, would be if, for example, like a doctor or a psychiatrist would regularly analyze someone to determine if they were fit to do certain things or to take certain medications. And it would be good if the right to own a gun would become part of this. It would become just another thing that would be regulated regularly, monitored. For example, people now, they say that there's strict control of who can own a gun based on their mental capacity and their mindset, and if they actually can own and use a gun properly. But there is always a threat nowadays of a person who is mentally handicapped to the point where it is unsafe for them to own a gun to get their hands on one, and we feel that it would be better if they were to more strictly regulate who can own a gun through use of psychiatrist evaluations.
Okay, pros. We got a lot of people that own guns at home. How do you deal with those people having children and those children potentially getting their hands on the weapons at home? We've heard many cases of children shooting their friends or themselves. What's your take on that?
Kids can get hands on parents, guardians, firearms very easily. We believe there should be laws restricting before you can get your license, agreeing to that you would keep the firearm safe from children, maybe in a safe or anything to keep that would prevent children from being able to get their hands on the actual firearm.
Con, your response?
I would first like to say that the majority of adults who have handguns are actually very responsible with them. The general public is actually 5.7 times more likely to be arrested for violent offenses and 13.5 times more likely to be arrested for non-violent offenses than a concealed carry weapon permit holder. Also, owning or possessing a gun is what makes Americans who we are. It's a right that we should have in order to protect what we own. I'm sure that everyone here wouldn't just let someone walk into their home and take everything that they have. This is where guns come in very handy. All you have to do is take one bullet and hit the guy, and your property is safe and sound.
Okay. Now, the biggest part on gun restriction or gun control is what type of weapons we should be allowed to have. What's your take on that subject?
Well, there's already very strict laws in place for getting an automatic weapon. It is extremely difficult to do so. To get an automatic weapon, one must get a personal recommendation from the local police chief, and I believe we should have the right to own any weapon that we like. If you limit this, then the government is taking away yet another one of our freedoms. Gangs get illegal automatic weapons, so I believe private citizens should be able to do so also.
Your response?
First off, I want to start off by saying owning an automatic weapon in Florida is illegal, which I believe semi-automatic should be illegal also. You can bump semi-automatic guns so they shoot as a rapid-fire automatic. We actually have a video that will show you.
Yeah, and this is basically demonstrating how easy it is. Because while it is regulated whether someone has an automatic weapon, there's still a danger to allowing people to have semi-automatic.
My name is Ray Vickers. I'm going to show you how to bump fire down the person that knows the basics of how to use it. Alright, so you have your charging handle, forward assist, mag release, trigger.
And there he just demonstrates the semi-automatic workings of
Pull the
the
charging handle back. And you're ready to go until you select the selector switch to fire. press that, push another round into the chamber. You're good to go again. Now you know the basic operations of using an AR-15. I'm going to show you how to bump fire. Bump firing is when you have your finger on the trigger and you pull forward on the gun, causing the gun to go off and the trigger to reset, causing it to shoot repeatedly as if it was going full auto. Put your finger through the trigger, through your belt loop. Once you get ready, pull forward on the gun. Okay, it'll cause the gun to go off. Make sure you do not pull the trigger. You want to pull the gun forward. So if you do everything right, it'll look like
That happened without modifications or anything like that, so that's shows just how easily a semi-automatic could turn into an automatic weapon.
All right, that will conclude our debate on the pros and cons. Thank you guys for coming up. So, as you can see, there are many pros and many cons as to gun control. And as I stated before, it becomes something that we don't like to speak about. We always say it's our right to bear arms and we leave it at that. The debate doesn't go much further than that. It becomes when we have a tragedy such as Columbine or Virginia Tech, or even, what happened in Aurora at the theater. We begin to have a moment of silence. And that moment of silence lasts until the next tragedy. And then we see something like that happen again, and then we have another moment of silence. We say, it's politically incorrect to speak about this at such a tragic time. We shouldn't politicize something like this because there are victims that are dealing with, these tragedies. We should show concern to them. We should show empathy to them. However, are we really doing those victims a service by keeping silent on an issue like this? We're not. Because have we been discussing these issues since the first mass shootings? Had we been talking about what goes on in our neighborhoods on a daily basis in our inner cities? Sometimes it doesn't affect us if we live out in the suburbs. Sometimes it does. Simple things as walking to the gas station to go get you some Skittles on a dreary night while it's lightly raining and you're walking around with your hoodie. Don't matter what color you are. You just look suspicious. Should someone be able to carry their weapon on them and go up and take the law into their own hands? Now you can say he was right or he was wrong. It really doesn't matter. The point is, a life was lost. Same thing with these other shootings. You can say, well, these people were mentally ill. A normal person wouldn't do that. Well, these mentally ill people got their hands on weapons. There was 13 people who died in Columbine, 32 who died at Virginia Tech, 12 who just died last week in Aurora. Should we say that this is senseless life lost? Should we say this is just part of, fate and destiny? That no matter what, this is going to happen regardless of the laws that we put in place? No matter your stance on the subject, whether it's for stricter gun laws, for lesser gun laws, whether you say lesser gun laws are going to sit there and be able to protect us better, we can have more self-defense, we can protect our family, we can protect our homes. Or you say, no, we need to put the gun laws stricter because we need to make sure that these guns don't end up in the hands of the mentally ill, where they can cause these shootings. Or maybe it's a whole nother discussion. Maybe it's on the control of illegal gun use. Who knows? The problem is we don't talk about it enough to get in there and actually figure out what the cause of the problem is. Even in today's political debates, the next presidential nominee and our president themselves, they're refusing to even really speak about the subject. Their answers, regardless whether you're Democrat or Republican, their answer is Second Amendment. Should we use that as a blanket excuse to keep us from being in harm's way? Because I think the right to safety, the right to living, is a greater right than the right to bear arms. We should be able to have all those other rights that the Constitution provides to us. But we should be able to, I should be able to drop my son off at school without worrying if I'm going to be able to pick him up. I should be able to come to class without worrying about somebody walking down the hallway and shooting me. I should be able to take my son or go to the movies with, my mom or my best friend without worrying about someone coming in and blasting on me. And that's what you all should have to not live in fear about. We should be able to walk down our streets and walk through our neighborhoods without having to worry about someone coming up and shooting us for our money or our purse. There's a lot of people who live in the inner cities or in the hoods. They should be able to sleep at night without worrying about whether a stray bullet is going to come through their house, through their wall, and kill their 2-year-old baby girl during the drive-by. That's not a free America. Free America is to be able to not live in fear. And without talking about these gun control issues, whether you're setting stricter laws or lessening them, whatever the case may be, whatever your stance is, the silence needs to break. We need to talk about it. We need to get online, discuss the issues, whether it's on Facebook, whether it's in a forum, whether it's through a petition to your congressman. However the case may be, we need to let the government know that this is an important issue, and we can no longer remain silent about it. Thank you.
27.